We're live. Look at there. Oh, we had the
Technical
weirdest
issues.
thing.
That was really strange. Let's bow out and we'll play the music. Let everybody
All
get
right,
in.
here we go. Hey,
Hey, everybody.
man, I just barely made it.
That was weird. It was like 15 seconds before we were supposed to go on, and suddenly you froze up, and then I started getting the little whirly gigs spinning and saying couldn't connect or something. So I don't know what that was about. I'm glad we're here, though. I hope we're
I
here.
just hit the button thinking, okay, I'll go through. And then you popped back on. It threw me. I was going to do the whole deal and think, well, hopefully he'll be back.
Yeah. No, I couldn't tell if it was my internet connection or what.
Well, if you disappear, just come on back anytime.
Yeah, okay.
Anytime.
Anyway, everybody, welcome. Hopefully you can see us. If you can, please let us know that you can see us. Give us a like or a thumbs up, or just comment in the comments if you would, so that we know you're there and able to hear us.
So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, interesting take on Q&A.
Yeah, so I didn't get a whole lot of like different questions that a lot of times I answer the same questions over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, I had a couple that were similar to ones that we've answered before, but
yeah, it's just really kind of interesting. So, but I had a coaching client, and we got into this kind of just really in-depth conversation about change. And it was fascinating as we kind of walked through this whole process. And I thought, that might be fun, because let me just kind of give you a little background. He's not in the chimney industry. And he went from about 640,000 to 1.4 million last year. And he'll probably double his business again this year. Now he's in he's not in chimney. He's a little bit, more established. I don't say established. He's HVAC. So it's a little bit, it's a different, it's the same, but different. So,
different scale.
Yeah. And what's really was interesting is, and I think this started, in fact, when we were down at Heat Shield. If you remember, he called me and he was like really fearful. And we talked about fear. I don't even know if you remember the phone call, because we were in a car when I was having this. You heard my side.
Yeah, no, I remember. I mean, he's serious about growing his business, and he's biting off a huge chunk. And it feels like a bit of a moonshot. And I can understand the trepidation going into some of the decisions that he's making to pull the trigger on things.
Oh yeah. And so that conversation was about, I just don't know. I'm scared. I'm afraid. I don't know if this is the right thing. I feel like it's the right thing. It's just this back and forth, this trepidation. And so we talked about fear a little bit. And so this last week, what came about was really talking about all the changes that he's having to make in his business and his mindset, and just how everything seems to be just exploding as he makes these the changes in his business. And yet there's part of him that's like, again, fearful to make the change. And so we talked a little bit about change, and so that's what I thought we would just talk about today. Is let's just talk about change. Let's talk about what that means and some of the issues around it. And if you guys have additional questions, please put them in the chat. Ask us. We'll certainly get into that. This was just something that came up. I thought would be interesting, and I do think it's also very appropriate timing, because there's so much right now changing in marketing, changing on Google, changing on on Bing, change, in the marketing world, there's a lot changing, but there's also a lot changing in the world around us that is causing trepidation and different changes. So change, what I find is it's almost like a domino. When one thing changes, then other things start to change along the way, if you will. So my first question is this. I'm going to ask the question, why is change so darn hard?
Well, there's a lot of ways to answer that one. Part of it is, psychology, but a lot of it is neurology. I mean, it's just absolutely the way that our brains are wired. Change requires our brain to be active in ways that, when we're in a routine or a pattern, our brains, have it easy. Our brains are conserving energy at its most fundamental level. That's what it is. It's, the brain is able to just rely on certain things happening certain ways because that's the way that they've happened for a long time. And so I can just count on that. You get put in a situation where there's change. Now the brain's got to work harder. And, for a lot of us old folks, that's tough. The older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing that interrupting habits or interrupting, established ways of going about my life and routine is getting harder. And so, yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's hard, but I'm sure there's better answers than neurons.
Well, I mean, I think our brain is wired for routine. I mean, I do think that's true. And it's that way, if you have the same routine and you know what's going on, if anything around you is different than that routine, then all of a sudden it's like, you're on alert. So I do think that reptilian brain, has some of those things. But I also think that it's hard to change because we just don't want to. I think it's a mindset that if I change, then I got to do something. If I change, what else is going to change? It's the unknown. It's the certainty of not changing. When we get in uncertain territory, we lose our anchors. So change means I got to pull my anchor up. I may have to, oh my gosh, there's some uncertainty there because I don't know what's going to happen beyond the change. So if we know what's going to happen if we stay the way we are, then that's certainty. So I believe it takes true faith to change, because I think, most people, when they talk about faith, they don't realize that faith is living in uncertainty. So to me, living in change is a faithful way of being. When we want to be certain all the time, there's no faith in that, because everything is rock solid. The reality is nothing's rock solid.
Renee Brigman's with us. She makes a great point here. If I initiate the change, I'm all for it. If I create it, I understand it, and it's more comfortable.
Boy, and that is so true, Renee. Yes. If somebody else rocks my world, I don't know. But if I rock my world and everybody else's, it is okay. Yeah. I love that. But it's hard. It's hard. That's fantastic. So here's another great question. What do we gain when we refuse to change?
Well, I just wrote an article for, or co-wrote with you, I should say, an article for Plumber Magazine, and talked a little bit at the end about change. And if you don't like change, it's General Eric, can't remember his last name at the moment.
Zinseki or something?
Zinseki, yeah, thank you. If you don't like change, then you'll like irrelevance even less. Yeah. And I've always liked that quote, even when I don't like it, because it's so well said. But when we refuse to change, oftentimes we think that we're just opting out of having to make a decision, right?
Mhm.
We feel like the non-decision or the non-choice to change is prevents us from having to make the choice to change. But in this case, a non-choice is a choice, and it can come at a cost is equally as disruptive as the decision to change. But yeah, so what we gain, I think, is the ability to say, my life, my world is comfortable. It may not be optimal. It may be that I'm doing things that hurt myself, hurt what I say I really want, but at least I'm surviving and I understand it, and that's okay, and that's enough. And so maybe that's partly what we gain is some psychological comfort.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's more comfortable if we don't change. It's just we're in our comfort zone. We like being there. It's like a good warm blanket. We just kind of lay there, and if we don't move, then we can just stay in this nice little cocoon, and that kind of a world. Which I totally understand that. That's not. Um, I mean, we gain no matter what we do. That's one of the things about life. You have to realize, what am I gaining here? What am I gaining there? I mean, you're going to gain something both ways. You just have to figure out what is it that you want more. I
Boy,
mean,
Renee's saying some great stuff today. I can tell she's really thought about this subject. I have to remind myself that I'm good at problem solving. Change is a problem to solve. Refusing to, I really like that because I identify as a problem solver. Refusing to change is like putting sticks in your own bicycle wheels. That's a
wow,
great visual. It's
yeah,
true.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great, Renee. Yeah, I think that's very, very true. So here's the next question: what do we gain when we embrace change?
Some excitement, you know, uh, our we become more alert to everything going on around us. Um, you hear grandparents talk about this when their first grandchild comes along, and suddenly they're seeing the world for the first time in a long time through the eyes of someone that's brand new to it all, and they talk about how it changes everything. Every little thing suddenly is new and different and alive again. And that's when you embrace that, when you say, this is what it is, right? Whether it's good change or bad change or welcome change or intentional change or unintentional change, it is what it is. And I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to embrace it. I think it can have a very positive effect on us, for things like anxiety and depression. But it can also cause some anxiety. And I get that, especially when you're making risks in order to change.
Yeah. I think one of and I wish I could remember the statement this woman had made, but it's been about 6 months ago. There was a tornado in Alabama, and it was just an interview, and I don't even have the TV on at that time that often. And they asked her a question. They said, "How has this affected you?" And she said, "Well, this is a big change, but I am looking at it through the eyes of curiosity." And I thought, wow, you know, I think when what we gain sometimes, so you're talking about that newness, that curious about the world again. Even when we have things that aren't really good things that happen to us, that are more negative, if we can just turn and look to them as through curiosity, you know, um, it's just I just remembered that was something that was just very impactful to me, that this woman who had just gone through and lost pretty much everything, was looking at her world through the lens of being curious of what's next, what can I do next, what's the next thing, what's the whole process. It was just it was really fascinating.
It's a very healthy approach to it. Psychologists will use that as a therapeutic. They call it a therapeutic device. It's a way of stopping overwhelming thoughts from, short circuiting our ability to reason or think through things. And, which can happen when fear is stimulated, right? That amygdala in our brain turns on and it shuts down the prefrontal cortex where all rational thinking takes place. And we just feel fear and we react. And so shutting that down is part of what the goal of certain kinds of psychotherapy is all about. And one of the things that they do is, ask you to ask questions about what's really happening, right? What is really happening to you right now? Are you really in danger? Are you really, is your life really falling apart the way that you're feeling right now? And to start critically, pushing, trying to reactivate this part of the brain to think more rationally about it. And that's getting curious about it, right? That's wondering what is really happening right now. And when we do that, it allows us to take what we're feeling that feels so internal to us and put it out there for a minute to look at it, put it at arm's length so we can see it. And when we can see it, we can think about it without feeling the emotion about it quite so much. And it can really help calm us down and get insight into what might really be happening here, or to discover that this isn't as end of the world as I thought it might be.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good. So here's my next one. Is there danger in changing? And here's my thought: is there's danger in everything. There's danger in changing. There's danger in not changing. There's danger in getting in my truck. It's just, there's danger. And I think people that think that if they're going to make a change, that their world's going to be magnificent, that it's all going to be better, that everything is going to work out. This is one of the things that Mark Stoner talks about. He talks about building his business. He says it's just amazing how many people that think that every decision that he's made has just been perfect and it's just led to the next thing. And it's been, rainbows and unicorns the whole way. And the reality is there's been a lot of danger. There's been a lot of things that he's had to overcome. Every business owner has to do this. Every person has to, do this. But if your mindset is looking for danger, then that's what you're always going to see. So if your mindset, if you can just kind of turn it a little bit to where instead of looking for the danger, looking for the best thing that's coming out of that, and make that shift so that you're looking for the best things out of those changes. That doesn't mean that you might not have to mitigate the danger or might have to deal with it, but it just means you keep your mind out of that framework of always looking at what's the worst side of everything.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Jerry makes a really good point here. Someone who knows something about change and sometimes unwelcome change. Change can be painful. It is up to each of us to decide if we will go through the pain of change or remain in the pain that we're in. You've said this before, and I've heard other coaches and trainers say this too. It's all pain. I mean, it's pain either way. You either stay with the pain or you move through it in pain you don't know to get through the pain, to quit experiencing the pain that right? So, that idea of change being something that is inevitable, it's going to happen, but we have choices about it. It's not something, we're not simply victims when change occurs. We have choices about how we respond to that, and we can move with it, move through it, or just get swept up in it and feel like we're a victim. And I rarely see the victim play work out well for anyone. I mean, long term, it feels good in the moment, and there's a payoff in feeling like a victim. You can absolve yourself of any responsibility by saying that this isn't your fault, or that this is something that's happening to you, and you're absolved of all, responsibility for anything. But it's not a long-term play. It's not a growth mindset. Let me say that.
No, I agree with that. Absolutely. On the flip side, is there danger when not changing?
Irrelevance. The Shinseki quote, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less. I think that's one of the big dangers in business. things change. Let's
Yeah.
talk about business for a second, because we've been kind of talking about the personal side of it, and it's all personal, and it's all business. But to me, I don't draw too many distinctions. But in the world of business, I mean, things change quickly, and the modern home service business, the ideas around it, the methodology, the management tactics, the operational considerations, the marketing. My gosh, the marketing. The changes that take place in those areas are constant. They are fast and relentless. And so our response to those changes, I mean, there used to be a time, I wrote this in this article too, that there used to be a time when you could kind of wear old-fashioned as a badge of honor in business. We've been in business since 1931. We do things the old-fashioned way, these kinds of statements. And that it was charming, and that people gave you a pass when you showed up and still did things in some antiquated method. But those days are, we've moved on several times from a lot of that kind of way of thinking. And there comes a point where your customers just have an expectation that you're going to do things the way they're accustomed to doing things. And when you don't do them that way, and have an attitude of, well, the world can go on without me. This is how we've always done it, and this is how we're always going to do it. It becomes a real liability. The danger is that you get pushed aside by, people who have figured out how to deliver a customer experience that people want.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. I also think there's a danger in getting stuck. I think when you don't ever change in something, but the brain actually creates ruts. And they say in order to get yourself out of a rut, you have to have a big mindset change that kind of moves you out of that rut. And I see that people that do the same thing over and over and over again, and that, that never get out of those ruts that they've created for themselves in their business, because they just don't change. And they blame everybody else, everything else. They blame society. They blame the employees, the lady that answered the phone, the customers, all the different people they blame. But the reality is they don't know, they cannot seem to get out of their ruts. And so, in those situations, that's when I think coaches are really important. And we've got Jerry and I think Chuck Roydhouse both on here, both great coaches. And me too. I don't know if I'm a great coach, but I am one. A lot of times what coaches can do is give them a big just shove and get them out of the rut, and try to really impact them in a way that says, man, you can do this, but you got to get it. You got to move. You can't just keep doing the same thing. In our business, marketing changes all the time, which is fine. It's one of the reasons I love what we do. But at the same time, we've had clients going on 10 years that still had the same problems they had when we first started going. That had nothing to do with marketing. And I look at that when the danger of not changing, and it makes me sad that they can't seem to see those things that need to be changed in order for them to really take their business to the next place they want to go.
I think that's where we all are, though. I mean, we do it too.
Sure. Some do, some don't.
We still have issues that, were present at the very beginning, and they're all mindset things. I mean,
absolutely. And, the fortunate thing about our business is you and I, we tend to rub up. And a lot of people think we're just such great friends and we're always, they don't see us behind the scenes sometimes when we're everybody's
armor and take up the jousting
exactly. When we're talking about our own businesses, like, that kind of deal going on back here. So it happens in every business, but every business needs somebody in that business. Sometimes it's the spouse that's doing it. I mean, it's all different kinds, but we always need to have somebody there that's saying, hey, this is an issue that needs to be addressed so that you can move on to the next thing. And that's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is a danger of not changing.
Yeah.
It is a danger. So here's a big one. Is change rooted in mindset or culture?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by this one. When I read it, I was wondering if you might unpack that a little bit more, like, because it seems to me like it's kind of, it could be both. Like it's not either or, but what do you mean by it?
Well, I personally think it could be both. I think it's either our mindsets that either I would say move us toward change or keep us from change, but it's also the cultures that we create in our own business. So I'll give you a really good example. So I always think that we have a really, mind culture of change and go and what's new and embrace and all that kind of stuff. Well, I've been talking about AI for what, 3 months? Trying to encourage our team, go in there, play with it, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. I didn't realize it until this week that nobody's really been doing it until I had somebody that actually sat in a meeting that I couldn't make, and I asked them to sit in this meeting, and that person came out of it going, "Oh my gosh, do you know what this can do?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been trying to get you guys." I said, "You need to get on board and get everybody." Now I got 4 or 5 people all of a sudden in the last 2 days that are really digging into it. And it's not that it can do everything. Don't get me wrong, but there are some real time savers, that some of our people can really use. So, I mean, that's just a good thing.
For sure.
If we can use something to where we save time in one area, that gets us a lot more time to do things in other areas. So, and is it going to make this moment? No, that's not. I don't think AI is going to do that. But I think what AI is doing for us is just giving us some ability to get some research done really, really quickly, and to be able to parse through it and look at it. But it's just funny when I say, "Yeah," and I'm thinking everybody's doing it. No, So our culture, what I think our culture was and what it is, it's just not. So I got work to do on the culture side because, but everybody knows my mindset is, and I drive them crazy because it's like, yeah, let's read this, read that, do, so that's probably part of my problem too. Oh, sorry. I thought I turned that off. So that's what I meant by that.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, reflecting on it that way, culture is nothing but a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of mindsets.
Yeah.
And, a consistent culture or a integrated culture usually has prevailing mindset. There's 1 or 2 mindsets that are very much in common among everyone. Those mindsets or values, is another way of saying it. But, that's how it shows up culturally. But you can break down a culture into individuals, and those individuals all have a mindset. And that mindset is either embracing of change, that values change, or one that is resistant or fearful of change.
Yeah.
And it's, but working through that is I think more of a one person at a time thing than, that's how you change the culture is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
One person.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So here's the last one: how to embrace change. If you're not a person that really likes change, like I'm a person, I love change. I love all the changes. I love when things are moving. I get bored really easily, so I embrace change and always have.
Yeah.
It sounds like Renee is the same. But what if you're not that way? How do you embrace change? How do you, it's not tricking your mind, but how do you get behind change in a way that is tenable, I guess, is to a person. And I don't know the answer to this, by the way, because I embrace change. I don't know how you do it. If you just,
yeah, you do. I mean, you do, just because in other areas, how do you embrace anything that might not be, that might be good for you, but might not be intuitive. And that's, it's
exercise.
Yeah, I mean, it could be literally anything, but change. Let's talk about, because mindset, yes, but beliefs about what's happening, right? Beliefs about what's really going on, beliefs about what might happen if this thing in my life changes, or this business changes, or whatever. I think starting there is how you begin to embrace change. It's building a vocabulary around what's needed to support change and to reduce the amount of mental friction that occurs when we start the process of change. So it's um, subtle things sometimes, but sometimes very intentional things of deciding to challenge those beliefs, and then to ask questions, query those beliefs, and then decide whether those beliefs about what's really going on are accurate or advantageous, and maybe decide to put in place a new belief and practice that new way of thinking until it becomes a mindset that works itself out in the change that you're pursuing or that you decide is necessary. Does that make sense? I mean, it's kind of an esoteric way of saying it, but yeah, I think it goes back to mindset and beliefs.
Yeah, and
Beliefs, especially.
as you're talking, what it kind of brought forth is the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. How he approaches habits, habits that need to be broken, and really that's change. I mean, you think about that. If you're breaking a habit or wanting to create a new habit, all those are things that are change agents. So, yeah, that's a great book. If y'all haven't read that, Atomic Habits by James Clear, it's just a really, really, it's a good book, and it's very actionable, which is one of the things I loved about it.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So we have any other questions here?
Well, Renee followed up with a comment about your assumption that she likes change. She says, "I really don't. For me, change is psychological loss, which is one definition of change for sure.
Yeah.
Unless I create it, then I have to do that reminding I talked about earlier. It'll be okay. Just take it one step at a time." Yeah. I generally, the people that have done the most work in terms of understanding change and have a vocabulary around it to sort through that generally don't like change much, but they and that's partly why they've done the work to really understand their reaction to change and when it might be necessary and all that. And I'm right there with you, Renee. I mean, in many ways, I like change. I like variety. But even then, I have routines and ruts that I fall into that keep me trapped in destructive behavior.
Yeah, I think just sitting here thinking about it, most of the change that I really embrace are mental. And I think that comes from being raised with parents that were teachers, very curious. I'm very curious about a whole lot of things. But the truth is, I don't like to have my life uprooted and a lot of those kind of change. So there are things I don't really like change in as well. But yeah, I love what I do mainly because of the change. Because it keeps me from being bored, and I'm terrible when I'm bored. I'm not a fun bored person.
No, I like novelty. I like variety for sure.
Yeah. Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. I know this has been a little bit different, but I just thought that, hey, I had the discussion, and since it didn't have a lot of other marketing questions, I just thought this was fascinating. So hopefully you guys approved. We've had a lot of really good comments in there, so really appreciate that. We're right at our time. So just want to let you know that Spark Live is also released as a podcast. It's on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Podvine, or your favorite player. Next week, we're going to be coming back from NCSG, and we are going to be talking about this particular quote. You ready? Many times the problem is not the problem. The problem is your approach to the problem. And we're going to talk about how that relates to marketing. So hope you guys have had a wonderful time here today. Thank you so much always for just tuning in. We really appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for the likes, the hearts, all that good stuff. And we hope to see most of you that are in the chimney industry next week at NCSG. We'll be there.
All right.
Bye-bye.